Hello, everyone, and welcome to Book It, Vince, the Wrestling Dream Match podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Martin Bennett. And with me, as always, is, let me get this right, the paranoid Pied Piper of TNA, Anthony Hall.
Holy, what? The paranoid Pied Piper of TNA?
Yeah. Saw this and went, that's clever.
The paranoid Pied Piper of TNA.
Who?
Is it Jeff Jarrett?
No. Jeff Jarrett has a number of other ones. Think of someone who was in TNA, also in Impact, who is famous for the crazy maniacal character. It's a dude.
Abyss?
No,
I don't know.
It is. You could say that they. Oh, I don't know how to clever. I don't know how to say this. Be clever. You could say that they lost their sanity.
Oh, is it Eric Young?
Yes, it's Eric Young. The paranoid.
He's back in Impact now.
Yeah, he is. But I think it's from early in his career when it was TNA, and he was the paranoid Pied Piper of TNA.
Oh wow,
wild.
Okay, what a name! What a time. Eric Young.
He's doing good.
Canadian, I think.
I think.
I'm 85% sure that Eric Young is Canadian.
I know he was supposed to come do a show in Toronto, but that got canceled. Yes. But I don't know. I don't remember if he is Canadian.
He's from Florence, Ontario.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, shout out to Eric Young, fellow Canadian.
Shout out to Canadian legend Eric Young, the paranoid Pied Piper of TNA.
But welcome everybody to this episode of the podcast. We always forget to do this, and we started this tradition, but we haven't been doing it for a while. Thank you very much for listening, and I want to try to keep doing this continually now. Shout out! I want to do a special shout out to a place within the world where we have listeners. And we want to try to make everybody feel special that you are listening to the podcast. So this week we are shouting out Wichita, Kansas. Thank you, Woo! Wichita.
Thank you, Wichita. Wichita
if you're listening,
State.
If you're listening and you're from Wichita, Kansas, please let us know. Say hi.
Wichita State University, home of the Shockers, where Toronto Raptors starting point guard Fred VanVleet played his university basketball. That's real.
Did not know that.
They had one of the best records in the NCAA in Fred VanVleet's final season, but they did not win the NCAA tournament. They were almost undefeated. Pretty impressive.
I don't know anything about basketball. Anyways,
it's okay.
This week, Anthony has a fun episode for us. Before we get into that, I want to mention something very special, because this episode will be coming out in the last week of January, on January 24th, I believe. So if you're listening to this the day of upload, thank you. But also this Friday, January 28th, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, over on the Unknown Error Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Unknown Error Films, we are going to be doing a 24-hour charity stream, raising money for Fuck Cancer, or Let's F Cancer. It's a very near and dear cause to my heart, because my mom passed away from cancer in 2020. And it's also technically my 30th birthday and also a 4-year streaming anniversary of us being affiliates on Twitch. So to do all of that stuff, decided to do this 24-hour stream. We're going to be playing games. We got raffle giveaways. We got incentives, donations. We'll do punishments. Like, there's going to be a ton of things going on, playing all sorts of games. So please come and join us on the 28th at twitch.tv/unknownairfilms, and help us raise money for a great cause. Just wanted to let everybody know that at the beginning of the episode. And yeah, so we're going to dive into it. Again, if you do enjoy what we do here on the podcast, please consider liking and subscribing to it on whatever podcast platform you get podcasts from, or come and watch the video version on YouTube, and leave us a review, because we'd love to hear what you think about the show. Anthony, you had an idea for this week's episode, yes, and I think it's great because we're getting in the road to WrestleMania is about to begin. And so, what better than to start? We did a whole episode about speculating what's going to happen this year, our predictions. But what if some interesting stuff were to happen, and why not dream book those things here today?
Yes, that's right. And if you listen to our 2022 predictions episode, you will know that one of the predictions included a current NXT star, possibly current NXT champion, and it involved them making a promotion to the main roster and winning the world championship, or one of the big belts. And that is one Bron Breakker. And this episode is basically us speculating and dream booking how he'll get there, some of the trials and tribulations Mr. Bron Breakker will endure on the main roster, whether that be booking or personal struggles of identity, family, who knows?
But what you said to me is that essentially what this angle and what this story is going to, how it's going to bookend itself, is that essentially the feud will end up becoming Bron Breakker versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So the big thing to start off with is, I guess, we kind of don't really know who's going to face Roman at Mania. There's a lot of, like, you could guess, I guess, like, is it going to be Brock? I don't know. Is it going to be The Rock? But, if they're really trying to push NXT 2.0 and those people, and people are hot for Braun, people love Braun, why not hotshot him up to the main roster and just have him have that second generation brand new, I was going to say brand new toy for Vince to play with.
I mean, it's true. He is essentially a brand new shiny toy. He's, of course, rather green, because speaking of collegiate athletes earlier, Braun was a guy who was just playing football and then decided to go into the family business, and he is taken to it rather naturally. He's been pretty impressive. We watched a couple of clips of him because, admittedly, since NXT went 2.0, we have not watched it as much as we used to.
Yeah.
But I must say, Bron Breakker, pretty dynamic, really good on mic, like has a decent amount of charisma, and I think he understands the business, being a part of the Royal Steiner family. And there's a lot to look forward to and a lot to appreciate about Bron Breakker. So I think if NXT 2.0 is truly developmental, what they should be doing is basically building up people as fast as they can and then moving them immediately to the main roster. Because as we've seen as well, the main roster has been rather depleted through releases and people being heard or just like not really appearing or being booked very well. So why don't you just inject constantly new exciting people into the main roster to keep things interesting, because it makes you actually want to watch TV week to week if you're like, oh, this exciting person is going to be involved into a storyline or continue to grow on this big brand and there's something different.
Yeah, it seems like they've started to do that with people like Grayson Waller. I mean, I don't know if it was more of a thing of like getting, because he had his match with AJ Styles on NXT 2.0. And so I don't know if it was more of like, hey, AJ, we need you to go to NXT to try to drive viewership there. That's probably what it was. But at the same time, like they had Grayson show up on Raw like a couple of times. And so I don't know if they're just trying to see what reaction he would get or that sort of stuff. But it'll be interesting to see if this year at the Royal Rumble, if they bring in NXT 2.0 guys and have them featured. And like the other thing too is a lot of the like OG, and that's the funny thing, it's not really OG, but it's like NXT 1.0 guys have started doing main event like matches, like being on the WWE main event show, and doing dark matches and stuff like that on SmackDown and Raw. So they're clearly making a transition there, but it's like at the same time, like wouldn't you want that live crowd to test stuff in front of that live crowd and like test people like Breaker, like Waller, like who else is really hot in NXT 2.0 right now?
Tony D, baby.
Oh yeah, Tony D'Angelo. We said he's gonna become NXT champion.
Yeah, he's gonna win big. Tony D, and the other Uso. He's not called Uso. What's his name? Sokola, I think. He's
something
kind of popular.
Yes.
And then what? Carmelo Hayes and those guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
those dudes.
Those dudes, you know, those guys. I mean, like, it's interesting. It's there clearly are some people within NXT 2.0 who they see as like the next big thing. I think the problem is, and it actually harkens back to like what we talked about with Nug, was how like, imagine this was 15 years ago. You would have people like Waller, people like Breaker, people like NXT 2.0. They would be in the same position as Cena and Batista and Brock, where they were in FCW for a number of years doing matches for dark, house shows and stuff like that. But instead, these guys are being put on TV, and the popularity goes up, but the quality or ability doesn't. Like, I think it's the issue of the popularity graph like is going higher and faster than the ability is, and technicality and stuff like that. But then again, also WWE is just into more of the telling stories rather than the wrestling. So,
right. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, how we see Bron Breaker's matches and he's being protected very well in terms of being green and his ability. And a lot of the matches are basically, small dudes getting in a lot of offense, trying to knock down Braun Breaker, the big tree, and then the big tree gets his big moves in and he wins the match. And that is very close to how AEW is protecting Jade Cargill, is what Marty was saying earlier as well.
It's a classic big guy heel tactic. I mean, like it's like with Jade, they have the other women that she's wrestling show off a lot of offense. Like her match against Anna Jay this past week on Rampage I think it was very good, and a lot of people had, the problem is too, both of those, like, they are great wrestlers, but they don't have the years on them to be in the position maybe where they are, but I still think that they're very entertaining, so that gives them a big plus. But basically that entire match was Anna, like, doing everything. And not to say that Jade, but it's because Jade's playing that character where she is the tree you have to chop down, and Anna Jay is the underdog. And it's like Anna Jay does all this stuff and it gets so close and you think, oh, maybe. But then out of nowhere, Jade does a power slam, picks her up, puts her in the glam slam, aka Jaded, and wins. And it's a classic big dude heel thing. It's the same thing that Diesel did. It's the same thing that Braun Strowman did. It's the same thing that, like, every big dude heel has done. The issue though is that, is Braun a heel or a face? Is he now a face because he became champion?
I think in this storyline and right now, I think he's probably a face.
It's like passing the torch.
In our fantasy booking, let's say, okay, so the dirt sheets and wrestling journalists have reported that there will be some NXT 2.0 talent backstage ready to go for the Royal Rumble. They're unsure if they're going to be directly involved or if they're booked, but they're going to be there. They'll be ready to go. And those names seem to be Braun Breaker and Gunther. So Gunther could be stomping through the Royal Rumble. Right. And Braun Breaker.
If you don't know if you're just a casual fan and you don't really know too much, but you kind of know like a little bit of stuff, Gunther is now the name of Walter. Actually,
the ring general himself.
This is a great conversation to also have in the middle of this. So we're going to set up the Royal Rumble and all this stuff, but a great conversation to have in the middle of this too is like, why is he named Braun Breaker and not Steiner? He is the son of Rick Steiner. Rick Steiner was a part of the Steiner brothers, Scott and Rick, and they were a phenomenal tag team throughout territory wrestling and then in WWF and WCW and stuff. And then Scott went on to do his own thing and, Big Papa Pump and all that stuff. While Rick didn't really have a singles career in WWE. He did in WCW a little bit, but Braun is a Steiner. And so it's like, why isn't he using the Steiner name? And a lot of people have said that before, is like, is he going to suddenly change his name and take on the Steiner persona or like really, lean into it? And I think it's, with Walter getting a name change. And I mean, this has happened before with everybody getting name change. It really seems like WWE like wants to give you a character. And instead of like, I think with Walter, they still want him to be who he is. But I think it's this thing of like, he was coming from the UK. He came from NXT UK. Even though he was on NXT a few times and had like the best matches the show has ever had in the past like 2 years. I think it's this thing of like, they want control over your character. And so it could be a thing too of like, they went to Walter and said, hey, so we want you on NXT 2.0. We want you on the USA network. But if you're going to keep going by Walter, we want to have ownership of that name. And he probably said, no. And they're like, okay, well, then we're going to have to rename you. And then he said, okay, sure. Because a lot of the times, it just seems like they want full control over the character and the rights of the character and the, you know, all that sort of stuff. And I told Anthony the story is like, I heard a story where it was they wanted to get the rights to Dominic Mysterio's name. And it's the same reason that like, what is it? The Rock, John Cena, like WWE has the rights to their names. And so when they do stuff outside, if they want to use The Rock or they use John Cena's name, WWE does get a small percentage. Like it's very small, but still. And Cena's talked about it before, how he's totally okay with it because he wouldn't be famous unless it was for WWE. So it's whatever. But in the story that I heard, they wanted the rights over Dominic's name, and Ray told them to say no and to work. They'll work out a different deal. Because Ray knew when you eventually don't work here and you want to go to other places and other countries and promotions, you want to use your name. You don't want to have to create a new name.
Right. And we also know throughout the history of the Steiners in WWE that Scott did not have a great run and relationship with the McMahons and Triple H and stuff. So there is also a little bit of sort of history and mythos behind the Steiner name being bad for the WWE. But again, like if you're a second generation guy and you want to cut out a path and make a path for yourself to stardom that doesn't rely on, you know, your family name and nepotism, kind of in the style of Cody, in the way that he wasn't allowed to use the Rhodes name or whatever, like that's really interesting as well. And I think there's ways to get around that, which I think will sort of put into the storyline. And I think one of the major things about our dream booking, I kind of like this because it has like fun subtleties. But I think we're going to make Bron Breakker have to question whether or not, you know, pushing away his family's identity, his legacy is a good idea. And if that is something that is a distraction to his overall success and performances. And if he leans into it, maybe things will be different. But we got to tee it up. We're in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah. One quick thing I'll say is that at the same time, I don't think that, like, if you look at any other, like, not necessarily second generation wrestlers, but just generational wrestlers, it's like a lot of people who are currently in WWE who are generational wrestlers don't have in their name or anything like that association to their parents, their relatives, or anything like that. Natalya is just Natalya. She's not Natalya Hart. Of course, she would be Natalya Neidhart, but she's just Natalya. Roman Reigns, like, doesn't have it anywhere in his name, like that his father is one of the Wild Samoans, or that he's connected to that. Like they've just established, like he is connected to that dynasty. Same with Usos. You know, it's like, so you don't need that. Like the only person is like Rey Mysterio, but that's because, or Dominic Mysterio, because they were like father, son, go. So you don't need that direct connection, because what they can do and what we can do in our booking is it can still be a part of it. You know, it'll be a part of it no matter what, because people know it.
Well,
you can't
right.
pretend
And
it doesn't exist.
It already is becoming a part of it, because Bron Breakker beating Ciampa, he used the Steiner recliner, and then after the broadcast ended, you know, Rick was there, so they acknowledged it. And it's like, it's not like they acknowledged it on air, but through social media and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You know, they saw there's like, oh, there's a special guest, the ringside, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, like we know, we know that he is associated with the Steiner family and that he is a Steiner.
Yeah, and you can't ignore it. That's the big thing is the audience knows too well. So you can't just sit there and ignore it. So might as well lean into it somehow.
And he sounds just like Scott and he wrestles like Rick. So it's like, all right, like,
yeah, but
it makes sense.
But so, okay, Royal Rumble, figuring out who's going to go to WrestleMania, main event WrestleMania. Yes. There are some, obviously there'll be a number of people, but there'll be some NXT 2.0 people. Breaker, Gunter.
Let's throw Grayson Waller in there too. Like, why not? Because why not just like, they're gonna give some of these guys more time. Tease.
Okay, well, I need to look up his name because I don't want to get it wrong. But the other, is it brother or cousin? The other cousin of the Usos.
I think he's their brother. He's the third Uso.
Right. He's the little brother.
Yeah.
I want to get the name right. Why is looking up the roster so difficult?
Solo Sikoa.
That's it.
And he's kind of got some fun stuff going on in NXT 2.0, but like, I don't really know. Exactly.
He could be in the Rumble because then they could, and the Usos could be, I don't know if the Usos are going to be in the Rumble, but like he could show up and then there could be a whole thing there. Anyways.
Yeah. But essentially, I think we see, classic Royal Rumble shenanigans. We're going to see Kofi's incredible escape and saving himself. We're going to see a bunch of people get eliminated. We're going to see, maybe Jeff Jarrett will be in the Rumble.
So who would be a good final, like 3 or 4 where we say, okay, Breaker's in the final 3. Who would be a good like pairing with that? I don't think. I think Big E, because I think a lot of people think Big E is probably going to win. But then we have to have a heel, and then that heel can throw a Big E, and then Bron throws out that person.
So who is a heel that's kind of teed up to face Roman Reigns?
I don't know.
Is Kevin Owens a heel right now?
Yes.
Kevin Owens then.
Okay.
So it's like, so I'd say like Bron Breakker comes in and he takes that classic spot that the WWE reserves for new people that they want to look impressive, which means he's going to get just an unbearable amount of eliminations.
Okay.
Like he is going to just cave in a bunch of dudes and throw them out or like hit him with some crazy clotheslines. He's probably going to do a big drop kick and like send Apollo Crews over, or he's going to eliminate Ricochet with a military press or something like that.
Yeah, he eliminates Omos.
Yeah, sure. He can eliminate Omos. That would be big. Mm-hmm. I think, it would be fun if 2 faces teamed together, like Bron Breakker and somebody else, and they both toppled over Omos. That would be a big moment. And then the final 3 is, him, Kevin Owens, and Big E. That's pretty interesting. I'd say like Big E and Bron Breakker have some similarities.
It's also very interesting because they all have been NXT champion.
Yeah. And I think a really fun moment is they incapacitate Kevin Owens and he's just in the corner and they kind of have a nice face off. And then they both take the straps off of their singlets and they do some big men slap and meet moment. and they get into each other's face. But then Kevin Owens comes in and eliminates Big E, and then Braun Breaker will follow and eliminate Kevin Owens, and everyone will be like, "What? What? What is happening? Will Braun Breaker have to relinquish his NXT championship? Maybe." And that opens the door for Tony D'Angelo to win.
I was just about to say, actually, you know what? Relinquishing the title would actually be very interesting, because then it doesn't make him lose it. So then he technically hasn't lost. Actually, I don't know what his wing. I don't know if he has no, he has lost because Champ beat him. But he goes out as a dominant champion instead of losing it and then coming to the main roster.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, if you look at his run right now, it's like it's not super dominant. If he does win the Royal Rumble, like it's been a short amount of time. But regardless, to say that, like, he doesn't get pinned as the champion, so he doesn't technically lose, which is important for what is going to happen post Royal Rumble, I think, because I think you bring him to the main roster and he wrestles some dudes. I think his first match will be on like a Raw or something, because you don't know who he's going to challenge. He's technically not a part of any brand of the main roster, so he can kind of float around and do the tour of like, oh, should I face you? Should I face you? I'm already NXT champion, so I can't just face myself. So it's like he'll wrestle some people on Raw.
It'd be this good transition. Maybe this is where they can do what they should have done with Karrion Kross and have this transition of, yeah, he's NXT champion. He brings the NXT championship to Raw, SmackDown, goes back to NXT, brings people to watch NXT, and then he feuds with someone on NXT who's like, you shouldn't have won the Rumble. I should have been in the Rumble. Builds up to whatever, and then they have a title match. Braun wins, and then after that, once it reaches to a certain point, he relinquishes the title and he goes to the main roster, and then that way at a takeover or something, they can have like a crazy ladder match or something for the NXT title, and Tony D can win.
Yeah, exactly. But this is like a subplot to our current fantasy booking, is what we're doing allows Tony D'Angelo to become NXT champion.
Exactly.
But yeah, he's going to win the Royal Rumble, so he has to go to Raw. Yeah, like you said, he's going to bring the NXT championship. And I think he has to squash somebody immediately. He has to absolutely decimate somebody. And that's probably going to be like, oh, God. He was a good person to be decimated on Raw.
This definitely needs to be like him facing off against like
Shelton Benjamin. Maybe like they're both like collegiate athletes, of course, and Shelton Benjamin has like a wrestling background, and I think he'd be a safe person. He's a good hand. He's a safe person for a greener guy to wrestle, and for someone to absolutely just bury. So I think, to make Braun Breaker look super strong, you bring him in with the NXT title, you wrestle Shelton Benjamin, and it's like, oh, this is the winner of the Royal Rumble, Braun Breaker, NXT champion. Who is he going to face? Like, what is going to happen with the NXT championship? And he comes in and he absolutely bodies Shelton Benjamin, just beyond recognition.
I think then leading up to Mania, you got to have him in like one or two feuds on the main roster where it's people that you want to see lose, or that you'd want to see him beat. So I think,
it's funny you say that, because I think I have an idea too. So you go first, and then I'll mention the people.
So I was going to say Baron Corbin.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Is really safe, and like is the person that you could easily have him face off against, because like everybody wants to see Baron Corbin lose. So then that immediately makes you want to cheer for Braun. The other one I was going to say is Sami Zayn.
Great. So I think that helps tee it up pretty nice. Like I think Sami Zayn is probably the first person that he feuds with on SmackDown. And I think he could just outright win that one. Like it's fine that he could crush him. But then you get this sort of
I think Baron Corbin is a great feud to show off the power and the ability of, and also it would be it wouldn't necessarily be a squash match because Baron Corbin is a huge dude, but it would be a thing of like, he could face Madcap Moss and have a match with him and beat him pretty handedly. That would be a squash. But then him against Corbin would be interesting because then it's a 2-on-1 advantage. He becomes the underdog. He wins out. It shows him that he has power. Hell, maybe the unthinkable could happen, and Bron Breakker is the first person to kick out of the end of days.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and I want to sort of add a little bit of story to this. But
then what I was gonna
Baron Corbin, yeah.
But the second quick part is that I think then Sammy is a good matchup to show off Braun's promo ability. If they can give him like a funny, like a comedic side, not necessarily make him a comedic character, but like give him sort of like Rock vibes, like Austin vibes, like that. It's a person that you want to cheer for, that is really good in the ring, but then also has charisma. And so Sammy's great for charisma. Baron's great for power and wrestling ability.
Right. And I think the Baron Corbin feud, I think it's going to begin with, let's say he just comes off of the Sammy thing and he crushes, and he kind of has a bit of a persona now. And people are like, oh, like this guy's going to be a big deal. I think one of the inciting incidents that would be really funny is that Baron Corbin and Madcap Moss both just like try to be buddies. Like they try to like recruit Braun into the entourage, and they're like, hey, we played college football. And Pat McAfee maybe is trying to like put them over. It's like, oh, if these guys were together, it would be like reliving the good old college days when they're superstar athletes. Like think about the domination that they could, they'd be so amazing. They would rip through the tag team division. Look at the size of Baron Corbin and Bron Breakker. But Braun, like, I think he is like, no, he's like, you guys are losers. Like,
yeah. He just straight up is like,
he's like,
that's perfect.
And that's what makes them very mad. And of course, we get that first match with Madcap, and Braun is going to win that handedly. But I think the match where he faces Corbin, that's going to be a classic WWE non-finish. I think like I think Baron Corbin will be getting beat pretty handedly, and Madcap Moss is going to like come in with like something stupid and hit Bron Breakker, and then that continues a build where it's like, oh well, what the hell, like you want to be friends, and then you're winning that you're trying to like undermine this person who won the Royal Rumble, and then he's like, I think he gets close to sort of accepting like a handicap match where it's like, okay, now it's Bron Breakker versus Happy Corbin and Madcap, and he has to sort of unleash a different side of him in order to win this match. And that's when we can kind of start to tease the Steiner stuff, where it's like, oh, like if only he really like went in and had the confidence of his dad, of his uncle, if only he had one more person that could like help him out, or like, I think we start to see a little bit of like internal struggle of him trying to figure out what his purpose in the main roster is, like how he can make it happen, and like what is it that he's missing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
no, I think that's great. And then I think that leads to I don't know if I think there's probably going to be like one. No, there's two. There's going to be what is it? I forget what pay-per-view it's going to be. I know that Elimination Chamber is going to be in Saudi this year. Is it Fastlane? Probably.
That
They'll be
sounds right.
Fastlane. I think Fastlane would be good for like Braun versus Corbin in like an actual like real match, and that's where Breaker wins.
Yeah.
And then maybe what happens is it is established that, because I don't know, I honestly don't know who. Here's my prediction. This isn't going to be on our bingo card, but here's my prediction of like how the chamber and what that's all going to lead to. There could be a thing of like whoever wins the chamber is going to face either WWE champion or what I think is going to happen is that Brock is going to beat Lashley at Rumble, and then at Saudi is going to be the WWE championship in a elimination chamber, because there's no way Roman's going to go into that. So I think for the WWE, and then that way they can take it off of, that way that in the chamber, they can take it off of, Lesnar. But so what I was saying is, I think then, around the time where it's like March, end of February, March, he has kind of made his decision. I don't know, maybe you have an idea of like how he can like announce that he makes his decision, but I think he then says like, I want to take on Roman. And then for that period leading up to, like in that little bit of period before, like the weeks before Mania, is him and Sammy. And then you can build into like him and the Usos, him and Roman, and like get really serious with that. But how do you think how would Braun finally announce that he wants to challenge Roman Reigns?
So I think he probably has to cut a promo. Like, I think he beats Baron Corbin and Moss in that feud. I think there ultimately is a match that is I think a handicap match is good to show off his strength and like to really bury Baron Corbin and Madcap Moss. I think, that's probably at like a fast lane or something where it's like, oh, okay, like there was a non-finish in the Baron Corbin match, and Braun Breaker just straight up is like, I'm going to beat Moss and Corbin, and he wins.
No, I just wanted to chime in. So after the Royal Rumble, which is this coming weekend, end of January, the next pay-per-view is Elimination Chamber, and it's the third week in February.
Okay.
So it would be Elimination Chamber and then something in March, but maybe they're not even going to do anything in March. They've been cutting pay-per-views. Sorry. Premium live events, which I think is a good idea because there's just too many of them. I think going Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, Mania, and giving that time of that March to build stuff for Mania is way more interesting.
So let's say that Elimination Chamber is where this Fastlane match would happen with Baron Corbin and Moss versus Breaker, and he just beats them. He fucking beats the shit out of them. Like he destroys them. Let's not piss around here. Like he's gonna wreck them. And I think afterwards we see the results of Elimination Chamber, and I think that kind of decides the Raw side of things. So it's like, oh, okay, we don't think Braun Breaker is gonna just like insert himself into that title picture.
Let's say
like, nobody wants to mess with Lesnar or whomever comes out of that.
Let's say, I don't know, Lashley wins the WWE championship or whatever in the chamber match. And then it's like afterwards, maybe him and Lashley have a confrontation, and maybe like, because I still don't know if they're like, is Lashley a good guy, or I can't tell what they're planning to do with him. Because I think a lot of people are really behind Lesnar, so it's like, but I think you could have a confrontation there. But I think ultimately it's like he has to show up at SmackDown, and it has to be a thing of like, no, Roman, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then we set up a bunch of like bloodline stuff where it's like, okay, great.
You could easily have
to get to Roman, you have to get through the Usos, and then you get a bunch of different matches.
You could easily have
you
could easily have Roman as soon as Breakker wins the next night on SmackDown, like the next week on SmackDown. It's like, Roman, what do you think about Bron Breakker winning the Royal Rumble? And obviously he gives him like a offhanded, like, whatever. I'm not worried about him. If he's smart enough, he'll take on whoever is the WWE champion at the time, because there's no way that he's going to beat me. And then it's these weeks of snide comments, or like Roman gets involved in another story, but like in his promos, or he like drops a hint at like Breakker, like, you should be scared, like, or like, don't even bother, or like, like all these like little things where it's clear that like, kind of like with Edge last year, where, it was like Roman couldn't keep Edge out of his mouth. So that's basically what will happen this time, is like Roman can't stop talking about Bron Breakker.
Yeah. And I think another fun thing to do with the Usos is like, he can beat them both, and it can kind of be almost a repeat of what happens with Baron Corbin and Madcap. But then in the handicap match, they could set that up again. And they're like, Braun, like, you probably can't beat the Usos by yourself. We need, like, you should find a partner or something. And I think this is like a good opportunity to like maybe start having him embrace more of like the Steiner side of him. And like, I don't know that there's a perfect person to pair Bron Breakker with. But let's say, because I'm a fan of this person, even though technically it doesn't make sense because he's in a storyline right now, but like Chad Gable would be pretty fun to pair with Bron Breakker for a match.
Right.
Let's say like he's out of the question. Who could we pair with the question Bron Breakker?
Is there someone currently in WWE who's like really tied to the Steiners? I don't know, honestly.
I don't really think so.
So one thing that we're kind of skipping over is the idea that we had with Sami Zayn. I think to quickly put it in here, I think it's like, yeah, he shows up on SmackDown. I think obviously the big reveal would be this thing of what I've noticed they love doing with Roman is that they love having Roman, like every single time he has won a big match, something then happens. It's like he beat Finn Balor. Or was it Finn? It was someone. I forget who it was. He beat Finn Balor. Cena shows up. He beats Cena. Lesnar shows up. Like, he can't celebrate any of his big victories because then someone shows up. And it could be the same thing here where he eventually beats someone and then Braun shows up and it's clear that he's like, I want you. At Mania, points at the sign.
Right.
And then they can build from there. Braun's now being primarily just featured on SmackDown. He comes out, gives his promo. Sami Zayn cuts him off, and then that builds that for like 2-3 weeks or whatever. So that we have this, and then we have Roman, and then the Usos, and then maybe it's a thing of like, he overcomes Sammy, and then that's when the Usos get involved and Roman attacks him and like takes him out for a week and then Bron can come back, and kind of the classic stuff of really building up like a underdog face,
Yeah. So, okay, great. So maybe, after the Baron Corbin thing is over, I was thinking maybe Sammy to start because it would be an easier feud to just establish character. But if it's maybe Baron Corbin and Madcap to start his kind of SmackDown run, that probably makes more sense, because then you can get a slightly bigger dog and like somebody who will help establish personality afterwards. Because we know he's strong, but do we know that he has any sort of character? No.
You got to hook the audience. And I think trying to be like, here's his character isn't really going to like hook people. I think him beating the crap out of a guy that everybody hates will just like instantly do it. Like Sammy would be good for that. But like, I think it's really funny that it's like, okay, there's Braun Breaker. Some people may not know who he is. And then I love the idea of, Moss and Corbin are like, come and join our group. And he just goes, no. Like people would be like, yay. And then as soon as like they get into a fight or whatever, and he shows off his skills, then it would put him over that way. And then you can start establishing more of this, like him having to show his tenacity, his quickness. Because instead of going in with just like a guy who can wrestle, it's like you're going in with Sami Zayn, who like is a tactician, and you could get involved with a lot of different stuff that way. And then I think it is this Usos, the Usos come out, like they attack him, and it's that thing of like the bloodline just putting him down and trying to bury him.
And I think that's after the end of the Sami Zayn feud. Like, let's say it ends in some sort of hardcore match. Like, let's see if there's like some sort of other more aggressive side to Braun Breaker that he can tap into. And it's like, oh, great. Like he does the military press power slam onto a chair and then pins Sami Zayn. And he's he's tired.
They love making Sammy have to do matches where he can't escape. It was like the last like couple matches where he like especially when he was Intercontinental Champion, they're like, it's a lumberjack match, and that's how Big E won the Intercontinental Championship, because he couldn't escape. This could be like, this could 100% be like last man standing or or false count anywhere sort of deal. And then you can play into it, and that way it's a bit more not necessarily one-sided, because a lot of people might think, oh well, Braun's just going to beat the crap out of Sammy, but like Sammy can be smart about it, just like he has been in the past.
I think another fun spot would be like in that match, if it's a hardcore match, you could put a table, you can set up a table for the final spot, and you're like, oh, okay, what is Braun Breaker going to do here? Is he just going to do a military press, power slam through the table? But then he ends up going to the top rope and he does the Steiner drop. And then it's like, oh, he had to like tap into this like extra thing that we haven't seen yet. And it's like, oh, but what is that? Is that him being like, oh, okay, like there's these moves, there's this history, there's these things I can do that I have been ignoring, and I had to tap into that to win. Is that going to be important going forward? And then, of course, when he's exhausted and he's like, he gets up and he's like, wah! The Usos should just come in immediately and just beat him up. And then Roman is just standing at the top of the Titantron being like, you don't want to mess with me.
I think then going into the Roman feud, I think a big part of it would then be this generational thing. And like, this is where I think you could use Braun to kind of make him. I know like Scott is to some people difficult, and like, has left like a sour taste, but like people seem to really love Rick, and they're loving Braun right now. And so I think Braun can then they could use this to make the Steiner name like healthy again and something that people can remember fondly. And it can be this thing of, Roman then uses his power and stuff to basically say like, you're just going to be a disgrace, just like your family, and like going into that, like getting really emotional, just basically
that's the kind of shit. Yeah.
It's that thing of like, and they've done this has been done before, obviously, but it's that thing of like, trying to make the person emotional so they make mistakes and doing that. And then Braun does do that and makes a couple mistakes along the way. And then that's where it's like clear, like, oh man, Roman's just gonna kill this guy. But then like you can have Braun show that he's a bit smarter, that he's learned from mistakes, that he's doesn't want to repeat history, or that he thinks that Roman is truly scared of him because he is an unknown. And he can say like, Roman, for your entire WWE run, all you've done is face guys you've faced before. Like, and there could be this whole thing of like, he runs through the history of like Roman's reign. It's like, you faced Kevin Owens, you beat him before. Seth Rollins, like, technically he's never beaten Seth, but it's like, you have faced people that you don't know anything about me. You think you know, but I'm an unknown entity to you. You don't know my potential. You don't know what I can do. And that terrifies the shit out of you.
But then that's where Roman will be like, oh, I know you. I know you better than you know you because I know your family, blah, 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 blah. And he goes into the history and he's like, there's a reason why you're called Braun Breaker, is like one of the things that he can say to him. And it's like, it's because your family name is the disgrace in this company. And it's like, ooh, oh my God. And I think that gets into Braun's head. And we set up some matches with the Usos, and to prove like the Steiner strength and the Steiner name and to avenge its honor, he goes too much into it. And there's going to be a fun spot where he is wrestling one of the Usos, and to end the match, he could just do his like military press, power slam, and pin him. But he does that, but instead of pinning him, he turns him around and goes into the Steiner recliner, and he's looking at Roman, who's ringside, and he's just like ripping on Jimmy, and then Jay will just come in and just like chair shot him or something like that, and then Roman will come in and do his like guillotine gauntlet thing and like choke him out. And it's like, oh man, he actually was like, he was trying so hard to bring honor to his family name.
Should there be a feel good moment where should there be a feel good moment somewhere within this where Rick gets to make an appearance and he puts one of the Usos in the Steiner recliner? It's like dual.
Yeah, of course.
Dual, like them giving both of them to them. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like, I think that's the thing. That's why I'm like, is there like a fun person we can pair with Braun so that there can be this moment where there is a tag team match, but then this person that gets paired with Braun gets incapacitated or like abandons him or whatever, and then we see Rick, and Rick has to come in and save the day, or have like this really cool moment where they both put the Usos in the Steiner recliner. Like, I think that's really cool, and I'm just trying to figure out who this person could be. Maybe it's like, I don't know, Ridge Holland. He seems like a person who can easily be molded into some sort of
not necessarily
thing
with where he's placed right now. Not really. I think like a big,
who else?
I think like a Big E would be great. I don't know.
You think Big E will help a person who is trying to become the champion? Well, maybe. Sure.
Maybe.
Why not?
I don't know what plans are for Big E. And it's like, if we're saying this and Big E's on SmackDown, it's like, well, what's going to happen there? I don't know. So,
okay.
Just trying to think of like a good face that people would then be like, yay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go with that then, because as we previously booked already, there is a moment in the Royal Rumble where these guys acknowledge each other and then they face off, right? So they've never really had a chance to face off. But in this scenario, maybe he's like, Big E, great person. He knows that Braun Breaker needs friends, and they are both people who have had to face the bloodline, who've had to deal with Roman Reigns, shit like that. So I think, yeah, sure. Maybe Big E comes in and he is like, okay, I'll help you face the Usos. But I think Big E gets incapacitated in this match, maybe by Roman. Like maybe Roman just like hits him with a Superman punch, and you get Rick who's watching the match, and Rick comes over the barricade, and then he helps Braun.
It could be like it's a tag match on SmackDown. The ref gets knocked out. Roman comes down, takes out Big E. Or like the Usos like take out some chairs, put Big E through a table, incapacitate him. And then at one point, like one of them goes over, Rick's sitting in the front row, or the two of them are ganging up on Braun, and then coming down the ramp is running Old Man Steiner.
Yeah.
Punch, the old wrestler like punch, like they come in, they like give like the like old old school. He comes in and does that, and then the two of them like do a thing with the Usos, put them both in the Steiner recliner. And
then the ref is awakened, and then they both tap out. Like the Usos both tap out. And that's technically a shoddy finish, but like, and not legal, but that's fine. Like whatever. Who cares? This is a story.
Yeah.
So I like that, where it's like, okay, this is the blow off of the Usos facing Braun Breaker, and it's leading up to Roman versus Braun Breaker, and it's like, okay, we really need to like mix in this Steiner stuff and also like have a nice feel good moment. So that's good. Big E is like, I'm going to help you. They're in the tag match, blah, blah, blah. Braun Breaker is a little bit distracted, maybe by Roman. The Usos take advantage, incapacitate Big E, and then they're about to just gang up on Braun. But lo and behold, old man comes down and he's like, yeah, we get those old man punches. Maybe we get a couple suplexes, or they both do some little shoulder tackle. It would be awesome if like Rick is old, but if they could do a tag team finisher together, that would be cool. But obviously that's probably not going to happen. So let's just settle with this. They both put the Usos in the Steiner recliner. Boom. That's really nice. It's a really nice moment. Roman scurries off, or he slowly backs away from this whole scenario, and we're officially set up for WrestleMania. And here is this moment that this will be very cheesy and stupid.
It would be, but I think it's if any, like what the finish of that could be too. It would be good if they put them in the Steiner recliners, and maybe they're tapping out, but the ref's not there. And then they throw one of the Usos up, they get him up. And cause I just looked up, I was like, what was the Steiner Bros finish? And they had a couple, but there's like the Super Steiner drop. There's the Steiner DDT. It's basically like one of them would lift up the opponent and the other would do a move. So there's even like the Steiner device, which is one puts them in an electric chair and the other does a flying clothesline off the top rope. So you could have like, I don't know if Rick probably be able to pick one of them up on his shoulders, and then you have them do something like that. Either the bulldog, the clothesline, something off the top rope. And then that way, then Rick can roll out and the ref can come in 1, 2, 3. We have time to basically talk about WrestleMania. But I feel like there should be one more big inciting incident. Maybe there really doesn't need to be. it's hard because you want to throw drama into stuff, but I don't think Roman hasn't really been doing a lot of like crazy drama stuff like recently. It's more of just the fact that like he seems to be the unbeatable. And so having maybe it will be this like final moment, go home show, SmackDown, WrestleMania weekend, and that's where Braun like makes a big power move and Roman looks absolutely terrified.
Yeah. And I think this is a really silly moment that I kind of want to happen. And I don't know if it will be too silly for WrestleMania, but I think Roman needs to attack Braun Breaker just like Solo, like just beat him up real bad. And it's like, oh, he's going into WrestleMania like pretty beaten and battered. Like he's already going to be at a disadvantage because Roman is the champion. He's got the experience over him. But this is where this picture that I saw that inspired all of this is going to come in. So I showed Marty this picture that I saw on Reddit of Yokozuna and Rick Steiner doing some photo shoot where Yokozuna is wearing Rick's headgear and Rick looks so strange without it. But I was like, you know what would really put over the Steiner family thing is that I think before the match or in the moments or days before the match, you get this really cool like backstage promo where Braun Breaker gets to have a moment with his dad, and then his dad gives him the headgear. He's like, take this. And it's like, oh my God, like he's actually going to kind of like embrace, you know, who he is. He's not going to push it away. He's going to use the perfect balance of what we've learned of his character, Braun Breaker, and like the things that he's kind of experienced on the main roster as Braun Breaker, but then he's going to have that perfect mix of the Steiner integrity, the Steiner toughness, and he's going to wear the headgear out to WrestleMania to face Roman Reigns. Because of course it's like we hit that family thing again where Roman's like, oh, your family's a disgrace to this. That's why you're called Braun Breaker. But him wearing that headgear really signifies that he is embracing that Steiner history, the background. And he'll look fucking ridiculous, which I would love.
No, I think with it being Mania, you can have him wear it and you just have this big, you know, over the top entrance music. Like you could just have this over top entrance and have him come in with just like explosions and all this stuff. And it would play. It would be perfect. I don't think we don't really have time to talk about like going deep about the match, but at the same time, like it's a Roman Reigns match. You kind of know how it's going to go. Interference from the Usos, all this stuff.
Yeah.
But then I think it has to be this like Roman is about to win and and Braun just pulls out the victory. And maybe it's this like superhuman sort of moment of like kicking out of finishers, dodges a Superman punch, puts it into another move, and I think it just has to be this like maybe it's a avalanche power slam off the top rope, something like that, where it just has to be a big moment, and it's just like, holy cow, I can't believe Braun won. And that's got to be the end.
Here's what I think will happen or would happen. Here's kind of like me playing out the match. Like I think Roman goes for a Superman punch, connects, and then goes to pin Braun. Braun kicks out, and then he has a comeback sequence where he like hits a shoulder tackle, and then grabs Roman, puts him up in a military press power slam, and then he just can't quite do it. And then we get some scrumming into the corner, and then we get a Steiner drop, which is like the basically a second row bulldog, and that puts Roman on the ground. Braun goes for the pin. Roman kicks out, and then of course you know how this is going to work. Roman is still exhausted, so Braun puts him in the Steiner recliner and just rips, and then that's if we're gonna go with our prediction and Braun Breaker wins, I think making him tap out via the Steiner recliner would be like huge.
I mean, that's the thing is like, I think I said like a big move and he pins him because it's like you want that like big like, oh my God, I can't believe it moment. Roman tapping out would be insane, but it's that thing of like having Roman give up. I don't think that this would be a moment of like, because that's the thing is like it's WrestleMania, and I know that there's been a lot of moments in WrestleMania history where it's like, okay, but I think you don't want Roman to pass out in the Steiner recliner because then people are going to be like, oh, come on, like, you know, like that's the thing. I feel like a big moment, just like a big move, and it's like 1, 2, 3. Roman kicks out at 3.1, but it's too late. Braun wins. Like just like
that could be
it's
good
Mania,
too. I think
it's the main event. You got to go huge, and having Roman tap out. I just think is like it's just that thing of like would Roman give up? And yes, he has tapped out before, but technically he's never lost and blah, 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 blah. But like, it's just hard to think of Roman giving up. But it would be crazy if like Braun did a huge move or a huge series of moves. And it's just like, oh my God, he did it. Kind of like when Lesnar beat The Undertaker.
Right. Yeah, but at the same time, like, yeah, we could go with the big moment finish, but I'm saying like I think if you're really gonna adorn and like usher in a new champion, like you can make Roman tap out, like, right, and Roman could go somewhere else. Like we could obviously go with the big moment finisher, but like I think like it's the thing that's too prescribed in the WWE is just like, oh, that person wouldn't do that, and it's like. But, you know, for the right person in the right moment, right, that person will do that.
Yeah, that's true.
And it could happen. But I know I do agree that if it is like a big,
it's tricky,
sort of unexpected finisher, or not unexpected finisher, but just like a big special moment, then getting a top rope, like power slam or a Steiner drop or whatever, would be huge. And then if Roman just barely is just a little bit too late, that can continue the feud. And they can get a rematch, and then we can maybe tap them out. But
it's good. It's a two-sided coin of like either works, and it just depends on what story you want to tell afterwards. Of like Braun beats Roman, and Roman takes a break, does whatever, and then comes back later, or like it just depends on how you tell and what will get a bigger reaction. I just think having the crowd chanting 1, 2, 3, oh my God, he did it, is such a cool moment and would be huge for the new face of the company.
And then you have, so Scott has not appeared yet in this entire feud. So you have Rick and Scott run down the Titantron and put Braun on their shoulders.
That'd be nice.
And he's like, ah! And that's nice. Like the big sort of wrap up to the family storyline and to reclaim the Steiner name.
I was just about to say, like, are you trying to book a third thing? Because we don't have time to book that in this episode. But I think that'd be really touching. Will it happen? I don't think so. But yeah. So I guess we'll say, yeah, let us know how you would book Braun Breaker coming to the main roster. And do you think that he's going to be in this position where he could be the next star? Who should beat Roman Reigns at Mania? Is Roman Reigns going to get beat at Mania? Who knows? But let us know your predictions or your dream bookings down in the comments or in the review of the podcast. To close out the podcast, Anthony, we always do a question and a match recommendation. Of course, if you want to leave questions for us to answer here on the podcast, you can do so by leaving them to us on social media, on Twitter and stuff, or by going to our website, unknownerafilms.com/bookitvince, and leaving them there. Question this week, Royal Rumble is coming up. So I guess the question, maybe this can tie into match recommendation or whatever, but it's like, who do you think, what is in your opinion, like the most emotional Royal Rumble winner? Like, is there a Royal Rumble winner that like you think back and you go, that was special. That was the moment. Like that was like, like if someone were to ask you essentially like, what's your favorite Royal Rumble ever? It's like, oh, I have to go with that one.
I don't know. There's not a real great answer, I think, for me here. I really liked when Nakamura won the Rumble. That was really sick. And of course, like when John Cena came back and everybody didn't think he was coming back, that was also pretty awesome. So I think I'll go with those two. Winner wise, like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That like Nakamura was fun for me. I was like, yeah, sick.
I know that was the one where I don't think anyone was really, I think a lot of people kind of predicted that Roman would win that year. But I think then once we saw Nakamura was in the final, like 3 or 4, it was like, oh shit, like this could be a thing. And then he won and everybody was so excited and it kind of just didn't work out.
The following things that happened were not great, but in the moment, I really liked it.
For me, I would say Rey Mysterio. Entered in at number 1. And that was also the year that Eddie passed. So It was all, and then he went on to, that was one of my first, I had seen WrestleManias before, but that was like my first, like as a teenager getting to ask my parents, like, I want to get this pay-per-view. I want to have my friends over. We really want to watch this. That was my first WrestleMania where like we had bought it. We were watching it. And we were all super excited, and it was Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, and Rey Mysterio, and it was such a classic match. But like that was a huge moment of Rey winning it, coming out on top, and like it was all for Eddie, and so I think that was really special.
Mm-hmm.
But
love that.
Yeah, let us know, audience, who's your favorite Royal Rumble winner of all time. And to close out the episode, a match recommendation. Anthony, do you have any match recommendations for our lovely listeners? Actually.
I have prepared this one in conjunction with the booking that we just made. I would love for our audience to go see some of the Steiner Bros' finest work. This is a match from Halloween Havoc 1990 in which the Steiner Bros wrestle the Nasty Boys.
Oh, okay.
And it is it's a stiff match with some pretty tough spots to watch. Like there are some pretty hard spots in it, but that is a really, really amazing tag team match and big time feud. I think it could have been even better, but the Nasty Boys left WCW shortly after that match to go to the WWE. So that is it. Halloween Havoc 1990. Nasty Boys versus the Steiner Bros.
Perfect. You can, of course, check that out just by searching it. Or if you want, on our website, we link directly to any of our match recommendations. So you can just go there and watch it. That's going to do it for us this week on the podcast. Again, thank you very much for listening and or watching. You can check out everything that we do here at Unknown Era by following us online at UE_films. Please, again, come out on Friday, January 28th, starting at 3 p.m., 24-hour live stream raising money for Fuck Cancer. Gonna be a lot of fun. I promise you that. And yeah, come out, support a great cause, and get to hang out with us and chat with us live on Twitch. You can follow myself personally on Twitter and Instagram at Barton_Minute. You can follow Mr. Anthony Hall
at Hall and Jokes on Instagram and Twitter.
You can follow the podcast at Book of Vince Pod on Twitter. And thank you very much for watching and or listening. Go watch some wrestling and enjoy the Royal Rumble, everybody. Keep being excellent.
Hurricane in at 30, baby.